Welcome to the Pence Perspective podcast, where we talk NBA, we talk, Bible study and faith and Christian faith. We're going to talk pro wrestling. We're going to be talking TV and movies as well. But this is going to be the first one that actually airs. I've recorded 3 other episodes, but going out of town, I wanted to make sure that I talked NBA Finals since it starts tomorrow on Wednesday. And I'm just going to give you my preview of what I think is going to happen in the NBA Finals. I'm very thrilled that we have a hero in the finals, and I'm not going to be subjected to the Thunder versus Knicks, which I hate the Knicks. I'm a Chicago Bulls fan. If you've been following me on X for a long period of time, you know that I'm a Bulls fan. I hate the Knicks. I hate John Starks. They're not my team, and so I'm very much hoping they lose. And that's where I'm at. The Thunder, if you've been following me on X, I've been very vocal about the Thunder and their style of play. They have been very I don't even know what you want to call it, but the flopping, the dirty play, it was just an abomination of basketball, and I was just done with it. And I'm glad to see them out of the playoffs. I think they would have still won the Western Conference Finals if they had Jalen Williams and A.J. Mitchell, if they were both healthy. But they weren't. That's how life goes. That's how basketball goes. So that's where we're at. They're out of the playoffs. The Spurs advanced, and I think the Spurs have figured some stuff out. So let's just start with the Spurs for now, because I think the Knicks are far less interesting than the Spurs. The Spurs, I didn't think Wembanyama played consecutively well in all 7 games of the Western Conference Finals. I thought he did a lot of standing around the perimeter and when he should have been attacking. Every time he got to the paint, it just opened things up for the shooters. And the shooters were just, they were just lights out when they were wide open. The Thunder had their most success when he was just standing around the perimeter or out of the game, and the shooters couldn't get a clean shot off. And I think it's really that simple for them. He's got to be aggressive on offense, not necessarily shooting the ball a lot, but he's got to get the ball and he's got to get some paint touches. Not necessarily posting up, but just get his feet in the paint to where they feel like he's going to take over and open things up for like Devin Vassell and Champagnie, Harrison Barnes if he gets in the game. He can still knock down a few shots. Keldon Johnson needs a lot of time to get that shot off, but he was really effective in Game 7. And he's an important piece for them. So I think he really has to focus on getting somehow into the paint where he's dangerous and kind of mixing it up a little bit. I do think that he is going to have a matchup advantage against the Knicks. I don't know. I think during the regular season they used Anunoby on him a lot. That's probably what they're going to go with, at least initially. I just wonder how sustainable that is, because they're going to need Anunoby's offense too to keep the momentum rolling. The Knicks are. Mitchell Robinson, who knows what he's going to be like and what kind of liability he's going to be like with that finger surgery he just had. And then Karl-Anthony Towns, I don't trust him to guard Wembanyama at all. He's got as good a size as anybody, but is his commitment to defense going to be there? He's also foul prone, so is he just going to hack and get in foul trouble, and then they lose another offensive weapon? So it'd be interesting to see what the Knicks do, but I think Wembanyama might have a humongous final series. I also think that De'Aaron Fox could have a really nice finals. I think he's going to have some, and maybe Dylan Harper too. I like the matchup they have against Jalen Brunson. I think they're going to use Josh Hart a lot on Stephen Castle. But I wouldn't be surprised if they switched him onto Fox just to try something else. There may be some Landry Shamet in there, which I don't believe in Shamet as a defender at all. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. I don't think Mikal Bridges has the foot speed to stay with De'Aaron Fox, and so I don't think that's if that's what happens, if they switch Bridges onto Fox or onto Harper, I think that's a win for the Spurs. And the big thing for the Spurs is I think they found it the past few games of the Western Conference Finals. Just making sure your shooters get good shots and they're making their shots. If they're making their shots, they're really hard to beat. And I thought their defense really unlocked something too in those last few games. They looked so feisty on defense. And Wembanyama was basically just playing zone, just patrolling the paint. If Mitchell Robinson is out there in the finals, he's going to be able to do that too. And if the Spurs rebound and if they shoot the ball well, if Wembanyama just, like I say, gets those touches and gets the perimeter guys open for some easy shots and easy threes, I don't think this series will go long. I do expect the Knicks to kind of fight back though, and to I don't think they're just going to roll over. I think it's going to be my prediction is Spurs in 6. But I think the Knicks have a chance in this one. I really do think they could win this finals if they wanted to. So let's talk about the Knicks. What do they got to do? I think Jalen Brunson's got to stay on fire. I know that sounds stupid. You're like, oh, well, no kidding, genius. But he's going to have to figure out the Spurs defense. And I think that's going to be a tougher challenge than what he's faced so far in the playoffs. And they're going to have to find ways to get switches. So I think they're going to do a lot of screen and roll up top, trying to get him switched back. I'm sure they're not going to guard him with Fox or maybe Harper. But Harper will be coming off the bench. So they'll probably start off with Castle on him, if I had to guess, or Vassell. Who both did very well against SGA in the Western Finals. So they're going to probably run some high screen and roll and try to get him a mismatch so he's going to go to town. And if for the Knicks, if the Spurs end up shutting him down, this could be problematic for them. It could be tough for them because if he's not going, they're going to struggle to score, and that pretty much means you're going to rely a lot on Karl Anthony Towns or OG Anunoby, and I don't know where you go to if that's the case. The big question for them is both Cat and Mitchell Robinson. What are your bigs going to give you? And Cat in particular, he's so up and down. He's so talented, though. I've watched him since he was here at UK. I'm about 30 miles from Rupp Arena, and follow Kentucky. I'm not a Kentucky fan, but I follow Kentucky a lot. And I remember that team; they were undefeated until they ran into Wisconsin. And he just had. I remember that Final Four game. He just they got the fourth foul on Frank Kaminsky with like 10 minutes left in the game, and they just stopped going to him. It was like, what are you doing? Like, post him up, draw the fifth foul, and then you guys can take this thing and you're going to the national championship. And he just didn't do it. He's so talented. He's so skilled. He's so unique in what he's able to do. And it just never totally works out for him in these big games. And I wonder what's going to happen with the pressure of the finals, and if Brunson is kind of negated by the Spurs defense, what you're going to get from him, and how he's going to handle Wembanyama. How he's going to handle that size and the shot blocking that Wembanyama brings. Is he going to be afraid, or is he going to sit up for the perimeter shot? If he does that, that's a win for the Spurs. And Mitchell Robinson, I like his game. I like his shot blocking. I like his energy. He's not going to be out there a ton, but he's going to be important for what they do. They need the offensive rebounding. But with that hand, is he going to be more of a liability than a benefit? So I'm curious to see what the Knicks do and what lineups they go with. I wonder if they'll go small at some points and really put some pressure on Wemby to have to defend some smaller, quicker players, and maybe try to get some cheap fouls on him. I think they really have to attack the Luke Cornett minutes, though. The Thunder really unlocked something there. Cornett was, until that block in Game 7, which blew my mind, until that happened, he was pretty much a negative in the entire series, to the point where I was just curious why they were even going with him at all. So the Knicks have a chance. They really do have a chance. They have a shot. They have enough talent to win. They have a guy who unbelievably is a star player in Jalen Brunson, and has been as good as anybody in these playoffs. But they're gonna have to solve some defensive hurdles. There's some defensive things they're gonna have to solve from the Spurs, on the Spurs side. That's what I mean. They're gonna have to figure out how to make the offense easier for Brunson. And if they can do that, they have a chance. If they can't, then this thing will be over in 4, maybe 5. They're going to have to figure out how to win on the road with them, too. San Antonio's going to be really fired up, I think. I think they're really excited. The Spurs shoot really well at home, better than they do on the road. And once they get the crowd going, it's a wrap. So if they don't win one of these first 2 games, I think it's going to be tough for them to bounce back, because I think the Spurs will take one from Madison Square Garden. And we'll see a lot. We'll learn a lot about the series in the first 2 games. So that's my opinion. I'm really excited for the finals, though. I am. I do think this will be a fun finals. It'll be a change. I think we're probably going to see some of the legends in the crowd from 26 years ago. The Admiral, I'm sure he'll be there. Hoping Tim Duncan makes an appearance. Avery Johnson, Vinny Negro, Sean Elliott, all those guys that were around those teams. I don't think Vinny Negro was actually on the championship team, though. And then on the next side, you'll see Ewing and Starks and the people that I don't like, who don't have no rings, by the way, because of Michael Jordan. So you're welcome for that. But I'm very excited to see this finals. I'm excited to see how the season ends. Excited for the NBA draft. I'm going to do a deeper dive into the NBA draft. But before I close out here, let me just let's talk about the Bulls. Let's talk about the Chicago Bulls and the NBA draft, and what what's going on there, because I see a lot of people bouncing rumors around. They're looking to trade up. They're looking to trade both picks and maybe get an all-star player with one of these teams that's desperate. Me personally, I would keep the 4th pick and I would keep the 15th pick, and I would go with guys that I like and hope that one of these guys drops. I've seen some talk about Cameron Boozer. Some people say he's not a franchise player. All I know is Cameron Boozer was the best player in college last year. He was the most consistent. He was the most impactful I saw. And personally, that says a lot to me about, about what we, what you want in an NBA player. I liked AD Abanza. I thought he was fine. I thought he was a little bit up and down. He had his highs were probably higher than Boozer's, but I thought his consistency was definitely lower than Boozer's. And to be honest, he'll probably go first. I don't think that he's not going to go first. But I wouldn't be surprised if Boozer went second. I don't think I'd be surprised if he went second over Darren Peterson. I think Peterson has a higher ceiling than Boozer, possibly, but I think he's also a higher risk. And I think the guy I think could really drop out of those top 3 is Peterson. I think he could fall back to number 4 and be there for the Chicago Bulls, and Caleb could jump him, and that'd be where we're at. And so that's who I would kind of look for if I'm the Bulls. I wouldn't go into the Darius Acuff business. I think he's a talented player. I like how he plays, but I don't know that he's a lock to actually be a really good player. I feel like that's more risky than what you need. Wagler and Fleming, I like both of their games. Not super crazy about them. Wasn't super impressed with what they did. I do love, now my guy from Louisville, I'm a Louisville fan. I love Mikal Brown Jr. I think he was holding back a little bit, but I think he could be a really surprising player in this draft for whoever takes him. And I'm hoping it's not the Sacramento Kings. I'd like to see him play with Dallas, actually. He'd be the one I'd like to see go to Dallas and play with Cooper Flagg and be their point guard of the future. And I think that'd be a really dynamic kind of duo that they would have there. I'd love for him to be on the Chicago Bulls. I think that'd be a great fit. I see a lot of Jaden Quanis talk from UK at number 15 for the Bulls. I don't like it. I just don't want to deal with the knee injury, the history there, and everything that was coming out of him. If you're not familiar with him, everything that was coming out of Kentucky, he played 4 games for him, was like their big thing. He's supposed to be a really tough defender, big guy. Would be a great fit for the Bulls, honestly, if he was healthy. But the big thing was he had the ACL injury, and his knees kept swelling and swelling and swelling. And from my own personal experience with my own son, who tore his ACL 2 years ago and is still not cleared to play basketball, his doctors always said you can never tell where the swelling, the stiffness is going to hit, who it's going to bother, and it kind of is what it is. And so I don't know. He didn't want to play through it last year smartly, in my opinion. I just don't know what you're getting. And that to me seems like a risk. Morez Johnson from Michigan would be somebody I'd like to see him go after if he's available. I like Lindeborg too from Michigan. I thought they were both super impressive, and I think they're the kind of players the Bulls are really lacking, and the kind of tough, gritty guys you need to kind of round out your roster, especially if you get an offensive player in those early picks, or pair them with Josh Giddey, who's not a strong defender. You're going to need guys that can rebound and can defend and can do the things you need to do to win championships. You go through Basketball Reference and look at the history of NBA champions, you're going to find there's a lot more teams that were outside the top 10 in offense in offensive rating than they were outside of the top 10 in defensive rating. And so defense still matters. It's a lot of times it's the deciding factor between two teams that are often comparable. And so if the Bulls can't defend, they're not going to go anywhere. And so far they've had just a commitment to offense, and they wanted to run and gun and play with pace and all this, makeshift Steph Curry nonsense that could never be duplicated. And they were being delusional for the past 5 years, thinking that DeRozan, LaVine, Lonzo core was going to yield some fruit if Lonzo could just get healthy, and he just couldn't. And it was never going to. It was more of a fluke than it was anything. So the Bulls are, to me, it's time to rip it all down to the studs. Like, there's nobody on the team that's going to be untouchable for me, including Giddey, including Modest Bucelas, which a lot of people love. I'm not as high on him as others. I don't like when that ball swings around to him and he passes up that open three and doesn't even look at the rim. That's got to change. He's got to become a floor spacing big guy in that aspect. I still like Isaac Okoro, but He's not untradeable by any means. I'm not a big Rob Dillingham fan. I think he's too small. I don't think it's going to ever work out in the NBA for him. I don't think they're going to keep Simons. I don't see a lot of these guys they brought in last year at the end of the year. I don't think they're going to stick around a lot. So I think they're going to pretty much just start over. I think that's what Bryson Graham's going to try to do. He's just going to start over, and I'm here for it. New coach, new front office, new roster. Let's just tear it all down. You look back through NBA history and you just go through all these NBA champions and you start looking at how they build their core. The draft is where you build your core. And I know the new anti-tanking rules have kind of changed things and kind of warped it a little bit. It's still the best way to build your team. There's not a lot of people knocking down the door to come to Chicago to play for the cheap Reinsdorfs. So if they're going to build something, they got to nail this pick. This is the big one. This is a top 5 pick. You got to nail it. You got to nail it. And so there's a lot of pressure on him. Everything we've heard from him is that he's a great evaluator of talent. And so if he is, then we're going to see what happens. We're going to see if he can actually see a diamond in the rough possibly. Hopefully another team makes it easy on him, though. And hopefully another team passes on one of these guys that seems to be a lock. I think Debanza, Darren Peterson, Cam Boozer, I think those 3 guys are going to be locks to be really good players. Once you get past that, I think everybody else is kind of a toss-up. I know a lot of people like Caleb. I watched him in North Carolina. I didn't really have an opinion on him, which I kind of felt the same way about Kobe White when he came out. Being an ACC fan, I remember playing North Carolina, but Kobe White never really stood out to me, and I was like, I definitely felt that way about Patrick Williams when the Bulls took him in 2020, and having watched Florida State was one of the Bulls' toughest games that year. And I remember watched that team very closely twice, and they were very good. And when they drafted Patrick Williams, I had to Google him because he was so insignificant on that team. And guess what? He's still insignificant in the NBA too. So that's kind of my thoughts on the Bulls and the draft. I'm going to do a deeper dive into the draft closer after the finals. Kind of hit more of what I think, kind of give you my mock draft and what I think teams are going to do, what they should do. But I just wanted to kind of briefly touch on the Bulls while we're here and just talk NBA Finals. I'm excited for it. It starts tomorrow. And I'll be back. Like I said, we're going to launch we're actually dropping about 4 of these this week, and then I'll be back next week with more regular content. We're kind of drip it out a little bit slower after that, but I wanted to get 4 on there for you people that like to binge, and if you enjoy what I'm doing, we're going to be talking WWE versus AEW. I went to SmackDown a couple weeks ago, and I had some thoughts, but I watched Double or Nothing the other day, and I haven't talked about Double or Nothing yet, so that may be coming next week where I share my thoughts on that. And I got some devotional pods, too, that one that's called Convicted by Their Conscience. So that's going to drop at the same time as everyone. It's going to be simulcast with my Teach Christian podcast as well. So subscribe to both. If you're not subscribed to us, subscribe to all of them. Subscribe to all of it. And we'll be back next time. Thanks. Have a good one.